Welcome to Triangle BNI. Today's show is brought to you by Oak City Tech. We talk all the time about the digital media world. It's loud, it's crowded, half of it's incorrect information out there. So you need professionals like the team at Oak City Tech to help you get your message out to your current clients and your future clients. So if you'll go to oakcitytech.com, tell them what you're looking for, I know they'll be able to help you. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Manning. Each week on Triangle BNI, we bring you a local small business success story. If you are not familiar with BNI, it is Business Networking International, the world's largest networking organization. Our little slice of heaven here in the Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Each week, about 31 chapters and almost 530 members get together, and our goal is to help each other grow our businesses. In our local small business success story this week is Melvin Green III with State Farm. Melvin is in RD18 Connections in Motion, brand new to BNI, brand new to State Farm. We're going to get to that. Melvin, good to have you on the show today. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show today. I'm
My
glad to be here.
Yep, my pleasure. Got a lot of things to talk about. We're going to get to your military background, which I love. My father-in-law is retired Air Force Colonel, Weather Wing Commander, so I got plenty of questions for you, and hopefully one day I can get you two together to talk. But let's talk, you're 22 years in the military, so when you retire from there, you're like, "Okay, what's my next chapter?" So how did you get to the insurance world, and how did you get to State Farm?
Hey, great question. So I think everything happens for a reason. I'm a big person that believes that everything happens is either a blessing or a lesson. Just to back up a little bit, I was I had put in my papers and decided to. I talked it over with my wife and decided to retire. It said you knew your time was gonna, you know when your time was up and it's time to go. So I around April, I received an email, and actually I received three emails from three different insurance companies, all in the same week. And they were asking me, "Hey, have you ever thought about opening an insurance agency?" Which I had never thought of to that point. I looked at the three of them. Amongst the three, State Farm was the most reputable and the largest and had the best reputation, obviously. And so I decided to say, hey, I'm gonna put myself on this journey. Ever since I received my MBA, I was always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I said, hey, it's a win-win. Let's see if I can open up an office in the Triangle. My wife said she wanted to move back to the Triangle. She's from Chapel Hill. Her family owns a restaurant. And so I needed to find something in that area. So for me, um, I think part of the transition, a great mentor told me, when you start looking for jobs, he said there's three circles that of influence for you. One's going to be pay, one's going to be location, and one's going to be job satisfaction slash job fulfillment. So I wanted something that kind of, I knew what a location was, which had to be in a triangle. I wanted something to satisfy me and fulfill me, something that kind of made me get out in the morning, get out of bed in the morning and say, I love what I do, what I do. And so the Air Force had done that for 22 years. So I was looking for a transition to a company that had some of the same values that were instilled in me while I served in the Air Force. And so it was a no-brainer for me to go to State Farm. And then the whole thing about pay, I most of my friends that know me, I'm not motivated by pay at all. I just want to help people. That's why Air Force one of core values is service before self. That that's kind of our motto for our office also. So that's what led me to State Farm.
Now you're a Carolina guy. Is it hard to wear red?
This is a Carolina guy who's 2 miles from NC State. So it is, I get inundated by a lot of Wolfpack folks. In fact, I've had three Wolfpack folks on my staff since I opened my office.
Okay.
Um, so the thing is, being I'm the boss, I tell them they have to, once they cross the threshold of my doors, they can no longer tout or can no longer root for NC State. They have to be Tar Heel fans or they're
Okay.
fired.
I like that. I'm sure you're petitioning the Council of Elders at State Farm to change to Carolina blue, right, instead of red.
Well, Carolina is older than State Farm, which State Farm is celebrating their 100th anniversary this year.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Congratulations. When we talk insurance, and we've had insurance agents on before, it's one of those things that we don't really know. We know we have to have, and it's a good thing to have. We don't really understand it. It's kinda like, medical insurance, like, "Well, I'm supposed to have it. I got it. I think it covers this. I think it covers that." Are most of us properly insured?
I read a stat the other day that said that 40% of people are underinsured along the business lines, and I believe personally that that is kind of that same number is true on the personal side too. Having someone Having been someone in your shoes in the military, I didn't think about insurance at all. They just told me, hey, you got to have insurance. So I had insurance for a long time, and obviously once I got licensed and got my own office, I started to learn more about insurance, the ins and outs, and why you need certain coverages. And so I immediately increased a lot of the insurance I have, and in fact, um, from every avenue, from auto insurance up my coverages. Made sure I combed through my homeowner's insurance with a fine tooth. I looked at got some more life insurance. And then my business insurance too, and then the umbrella. I don't think so. I'm probably gonna get kicked out of the insurance mafia, but I don't think everybody needs an umbrella policy. But for me, I think if you're in one of five categories, you probably need an umbrella policy. One is if you're a business owner. Two, if you have a pool on your on your property. Three is if you have a high net worth, or if you have a high paying job. And then five, if you're a local celebrity. Like one of my customers is on the news every night. So um, and umbrellas are there to again provide against liability and suits of liability because we live in a very litigious society. People will sue you for everything these days, even friends and family. Friends and family are cool until someone gets injured on your property, and then no longer friends and family anymore, pretty
And
much.
the assumption on the umbrella policy is, "I can't afford that." And that's not the truth, is it?
A lot of insurance policies are cheaper than what people. They did actually surveys, and
Mm.
they're cheaper than what people would imagine. Especially umbrella policy on average at state. I have to say, State Farm is about $12 a month, so $144 a year. Provides an
Wow.
extra $1 million worth of protection for you and your autos, you and your family driving your autos and on your house at your house on your property. And why is that important? Well, my office is in Raleigh. I live in Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill, I would say per capita in North Carolina has more doctors than any other city in North Carolina. And there's a street that I drive every day on the way to go to visit my wife at work, and it's a crosswalk, and you can have a green light, and people will cross the street, and it says, "Hey, yield to the pedestrians." Well, what happens if you hit one of those doctors? True story, too. This has happened. Someone hit one of those doctors, 8 surgeries, and $600,000 later, the doctor was finally released. Now, how many people raise your hand if you have $600,000 worth of auto insurance to protect you if that happens? So
Not many.
the average person does not. But again, not the average person needs that, but at the same time, you have to be acutely aware of your situation. The more you have, the more older. Generally, the older you get, the more you have, the more you accumulate, and the more you need to protect.
And I think the other thing we don't take into consideration is when we are in a dispute or an accident or something like that with people who don't have any insurance.
Yeah.
And then we're
So
stuck covering almost everything, right?
yeah. North Carolina has state minimums. They call them minimums for a reason, and the majority of people try to get those minimums because they say, "Hey, this is all I need," and they don't think about it. Well, the minimums won't cover hitting the average or hitting and totaling the average car in the triangle. So a couple of years ago, the average car in the triangle was worth $32,000.
The
I mean, that was a couple of years
average?
ago. The average, yeah.
Gee. All those doctors in
So,
Chapel Hill driving up the price, huh?
oh well, not only that, you got the chip shortages, you
Yep.
got COVID and things like that. So I mean, it's ridiculous out here. But I mean, so if you hit the average car and you have minimums, you're going to be upside down in insurance. So that's why I try to tell folks, hey, the more you have, the more you protect, you need to protect.
My lesson to car owners was a painful one for me a couple of years ago. I just bought this, pre-owned I'm a minivan guy. I'm old, and I just like it because I don't have one right now, but I did. You can carry all the things you need to. You sit up high, loved it. And I bought it. It's a good deal, and I was at the dealership, and the guy said, "Do you want gap insurance?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm good." And 4 months later, I got T-boned. Never saw the car coming. I got T-boned, totaled the van, and guess who was out $3,800 because I didn't have gap insurance, and the insurance company said, "Oh, here's what we're going to, appraise it for," and it was lower than what I bought it for, and I was out
Man,
3,800 bucks. So, if they ever ask you, "Do you want gap insurance?" my recommendation to you is, you better get it.
I have never purchased gap insurance.
And I hadn't
So
either, but
yeah.
I will next time.
Uh,
So,
so you're a minivan guy. I'm a pre-owned guy. So I'll
yep,
let someone else take the depreciation.
yep,
So
yep.
um, and then once I one of the luxuries about State Farm Bank is like all the vehicles. Well, it used to be State Farm Bank. It, if you finance with them, you automatically got gap insurance.
Nice.
Uh, so that was an awesome perk.
Yep.
I miss State Farm Bank. Hopefully they come back. um,
Do
but
you get, "So where's Jake?" questions a lot?
I do. I think the most recent time was last week. Actually, Herschel and I went out for a one on one, and we were at the restaurant, and someone said, "Oh," she was like, "Oh," she's like, "Is Jake?"
Yeah.
And she's saying, and the funny thing is, I was wearing a State Farm red sweater, and it had the three little logos for our logo for State Farm. It didn't say State Farm, but it had the logo. And so she says, she says, she's like, "Oh, you look like you're dressed up like Jake from State Farm." And I said, and she says, and I said, "Well, um, I am from State Farm." And so she didn't even know I had a State Farm, I worked at State Farm, or I had a State Farm sweater on. She just thought I had on a red sweater and a white shirt, and she just called me Jake. But yeah, it happens quite often. I mean, but I look at it as a positive.
Mhm.
If they know that commercial, if they know that the marketing's working, that branding's working too. So,
Yeah,
um,
and the new Jake they have was better than the old one. I'll say
oh
that. I
yeah,
like the new Jake, and he and Mahomes are good. I like that. But you're right, the whole goal in business is just to start a conversation,
yep,
and you did, or she did, and so, yeah, I would imagine you get that all the time of I've
yeah.
heard that other State Farm agents, when they go, if you're, let's say you have a table at some networking event or you're sponsored a school or something like that, and they take the cutout, Jake, cardboard Jake that's, life size, and people all the time walking up just get their picture taken.
I have yet to order mine, but I have seen that quite often.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Too funny. Hey, going back to the original question of why insurance, how did those three insurance companies know you were retiring from the military?
Uh, I don't think they knew I was retiring from the military. I think I rewind back. I had put on LinkedIn that I think I put transitioning
Uh,
military officer or
got
something.
you. Okay.
So I believe that's what gave them the indication of yes,
All right.
that.
You are Melvin Green the third. Tell me about Melvin Green the first.
So my grandfather was a great man, military veteran also, much taller than me. You and I were remarking earlier about being about grandparents.
Yep.
So used to love hanging out with my grandparents. And yeah, he passed away when I was right around 12 years old. So he was my first grandfather to pass away. Uh, but he didn't say much. I remember he liked watching news and he liked his wrestling was the other thing I remember. about him.
Nice. I like that. And Melvin Green II obviously is your dad
Yes, Melvin Green Jr. is my father. He's a
or
great
junior.
man, also military veteran, also. So I'm a third generation veteran. They both did Army. My dad was a drill sergeant, actually. So imagine growing up in a household with a drill sergeant.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
and so yeah, so
Yeah.
I remember when I told him I was at Carolina, and I said, Dad, I'm thinking about joining ROTC. He's like, all right, just don't sign any papers. So it got to the point where I joined the program. I liked the program. And he's like, I said, hey, I'm at the point now I have to sign papers. He's like, okay. So, but he's been supportive of me being in the military. And he never talked about his military time, or he never pushed me towards the military. Again, it was just something I always wanted to. I always wanted to fly, but I never thought it was possible until I did all TC, and I said, well, you know what? My grades are good enough, my scores are good enough on the aptitude tests and stuff like that. So let's see how this fly. Let's see if I can go fly. So,
Outside of the military, what do Melvin 1, 2, and 3, what else do you have in common, personality-wise or anything like that?
my dad is his personality is very similar to mine. He doesn't he I have kind of forced my he's more what's it called? More of a type B personality. He's kind of inward. He doesn't say a lot of. He doesn't say a lot. But I was like that for the longest time. But when I ran ROTC program over in Valdosta State, I had to break out that shell and recruit people, recruit cadets. And so being a recruiter helped. You can't change your personality, but it helped me become more outgoing and
Mm,
outspoken.
yep.
And so, which has helped me in my business. So, but my dad again is more quiet, more reserved. And then the other thing I get from him is that my dad will help anybody, anytime, almost to a fault. Really, I mean, he's driven like an hour to cut people's grass, senior citizens' grass. I mean, he's done. I've seen him do a lot of good things, and he will not say no. And so I kind of adopted that too from my dad, and sometimes it's almost to a fault where we we kind of sacrifice our time to help others. And my wife actually is had a conversation with me. She's like, "Hey, you need to learn how to tell people no sometimes." So it's a balance there
Yep.
right now. So, but I try to help as many people as I can.
And that's a good thing for your 3 kids to see is their grandfather driving all that way to help people who need some help, so that's a good thing for them to have. Now, growing up with a drill sergeant, how good did your bedroom look?
Um, not as good as I probably not as good as I probably should have. I was telling my son this the other day. I shared my room with my brother. So God has blessed me to be in a petition in a spot now where my kids have their own bedrooms. But I was telling him, I said, hey, I had to share a room with my brother, and we both had to keep the room clean. So my dad was he he didn't have to say much to my again. He didn't speak much. He didn't have to say much. I came home with good grades. It was just an automatic thing. Hey, you come home with good grades, you don't get in trouble. Because my dad was reservist, so he wasn't full time active duty like I was, and so he worked at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard. He worked the third shift, late shift. He didn't get home till 2 o'clock in the morning. So if you did get in trouble, my mom was like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell your dad," and then you had to sit on pins and needles, and you couldn't sleep until 2 o'clock in the morning when dad got home. So
Yeah.
I remember a comedian hearing that, like when you hear that door shut, and then you just automatically start sweating. So that's me.
Were you up early in the well, first of all, let's go back. How many different places did you live growing up?
Growing up,
Yeah, did you travel a lot because your dad was in the military?
he was a reservist, so we didn't travel a lot.
Okay.
He was we were in North Carolina. I was born in Virginia, Suffolk, Virginia, but we did move over to Gates County, North Carolina, when I was young. And my parents bought their home, and they bought their first home, and their first insurance agent, was a State Farm agent who she went to Carolina. I met her for the first time a few months ago.
Oh,
She's
nice.
awesome. So
Did your
she's
dad move
went
around
there.
a lot with his dad being in the military?
No, he didn't serve long. My grandfather didn't serve long. He did one tour, essentially like four years. Um, but I have moved uh, a lot over my time, my 22 years. Not as much as most Army folks do. Air Force doesn't move as much,
Yep.
depending on your job. I flew B-52 bombers, so there were only two bases we could go to: Minot, North Dakota, where it's freezing cold, or Shreveport, Bossier City, Louisiana, where it's pretty warm and humid.
Yep. My father-in-law is a retired Air Force colonel. He was a weather wing commander. And my brother-in-law went into the Air Force right out of college, and he was a B-52 nav.
Uh,
And that's when I learned about Minot, North Dakota. It's like,
yeah.
if you can get away from there, you might wanna get away from there.
So I was a navigator, bombardier. So same career as your brother. You say your brother?
Brother-in-law.
Okay,
Yep.
same career.
Yeah, he got out and went into the FBI. But
Oh,
that
okay.
again, Minot, very cold, missile silos, isolated.
Yep. I did not want to go there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did your kids mind moving around a little bit?
so we had our we had our kids young, relatively young. So right after we got married, so they were younger when we moved around. And kids are very resilient, and they they didn't they have some of their friends that they still maintain contact to today. But for the large part, they didn't mind moving. Um, I never heard them fuss, complain, or anything like that about moving. So like I said, they're pretty resilient. They adjust quite easily to most environments. So they were good. I think it would have been more tougher if had they been older kids, preteens, teenagers, to have done that.
My wife, lived in a number of different places. They moved around a little bit more than you did. But in between all the Lubbocks and the Illinois of the world, were Germany and Turkey. So this was in the mid 70s. They lived in Turkey. It was okay to live over there. They got to travel a bunch and they moved. They were in San Antonio and her dad got rotated to Germany. Oh yeah, the summer of her senior year in high school. So her parents moved her to Germany and she said she made their life miserable for a year.
Yeah, that would have been tough.
Yeah, but she graduated high school in Heidelberg, Germany, learned how to drink the dark beer, came back 2 years later, went to college here in the US and drank all those boys under the table, so, yeah, so that was her claim to fame back then, but we don't brag about that too much. So your wife, Sissy, I always like to ask folks, uh, how did you 2 meet, and you both tell the story the same way?
um, I think we tell the story the same way. We both met we met our senior year in college. She was going to Central University in Durham. I was going to Carolina. We were both working at a telemarketing research firm called FGI at the time, and we met. Went on our first date. She went with me to. Later, she went with me to the ROTC ball, and we actually got married down the street in Chapel Hill, down the street, Orange United Methodist Church, white church down, big white church down MLK, and we circled back. We lived down the street from that church we got married in. And our son, our oldest son, got Eagle Scout at that church that we were married in. So,
Nice.
so it's a lot of coincidences and a lot of things that's kind of anchoring us back to Chapel Hill.
Very cool. Now,
Um,
literally, how were you 2 introduced?
how were we introduced?
How'd you meet for the first time?
We were at FGI. I thought she was pretty cute young lady, and I just had the nerve to go up there to ask her out on a date. And so from that point on, she went. She said yes, and she went out on a date with me.
There you go.
And yeah. So it's not a hugely magical story, but it was all fireworks from there.
Worked for you, didn't
Did.
it?
She tells me and she tells the kids I have no game. I was like, well, if I didn't have any game, how did I get you? So um, it had to work. So, but,
Now at that point in time when you 2 met, did she know how far along a potential military career you were?
yes. So I'm the type of person. I'm very transparent with folks. I don't like to hide stuff at all. I like to be open and honest because I like to plan and I like you to have a good plan for you. I'm a big planner. So she knew I was in ROTC. She knew because she went with me to the ROTC ball. In fact, as we started getting more serious towards when I actually graduated on my way to flight school, told her about that too. And so I kept her in the loop about everything going forward. And even when I got selected to go fly the B-52 bomber, I was like, "Hey, I'm going to fly the bomber." And she was worried. She's like, "Well," and I think we were engaged at that point. She's like, "Well, I don't." She's like, "I don't know how we gonna how everything's." I said, "Well," I remember telling us. I said, "Well, if they're not gonna do any. We're not gonna deploy a lot. They don't send the B-52 unless there's something serious going on." And then we got married in 2000 and 2001. I was on a plane, a 28-hour flight to go fly combat, my first time in
Mhm.
combat. So, we Operation Enduring Freedom, OEF in Afghanistan. So,
You had talked about, last week when you did your, presentation at our BNI meeting, you talked about that 28-hour flight. Where did you take off from, and where did you end up landing?
so we took off from Barksdale Air Force Base in the middle of the night. This was right after 9/11 uh, uh, was we were on alert on 9/11 for an exercise. So we were all like a lot of the crew force were already together at Barksdale Air Force Base. So we saw the planes hit the towers and our alert bell went out. We responded and ran to the jets. So we were out on the tarmac for hours. I don't know. I mean, for hours. And then I could hear some traffic I had my headphones on, so I could hear some of the air traffic, tower traffic, really. And next thing I know, I see two pointy nose fighters circling over the airfield. And I was like, oh man, I said, and they started capping above the airfield. So I was like, oh, something's going on. And next thing I know, I see Air Force One rolling out on the
Oh,
airfield. And so I don't know if you remember that, but George Bush went and made the speech
to the kids.
from
Yep.
Barksdale Air Force Base.
Okay.
So I remember vividly, and a lot of people would remember where they were on 9/11. I remember that. And I remember vividly too that I'm looking down the tarmac and I'm looking at Air Force One and it's parked. And I'm looking at it as it's flanked by these B-52s. The B-52 is a big bomb. It's a
Mhm.
180-foot wingspan, 165 feet from nose to tail, and it was dwarfed by Air Force One. I mean, Air Force One was just huge plane. So
Wow.
I remember that, and I remember the commander of the F-16s. Um, the F-16s were commandeered from another base, so the commander was calling to get his F-16s to return to base. And I remember the Air Force One pilot telling them, "You tell that commander they got higher orders." And so I remember that. So he shut them down. But yeah, it was a yeah. It was I never forget that moment.
Yep. So you leave Barksdale, headed out for 28
Right.
hours. You're headed to
Yep.
Afghanistan, right?
No, we flew. We launched. They put us on for. We stayed on base for like a week to a week and a half. And then they told us, "Hey, go home, say, pack your bags, say hello to your loved ones, and we're shipping out." So we flew from Barksdale Air Force Base to a small island in the Indian Ocean called Diego Garcia.
You
It's
know,
about
I learned about Diego Garcia from my father-in-law. He landed there a couple
yeah.
times too.
So it's a small British owned island. We flew straight there. We went the long way for some reason, um, and we took us four air refuelings to get there. But yeah, 28 hours.
And how many people on the plane with you on that flight?
We had an augmented crew, so we want to say we had, I want to say we had 8 on the plane.
Okay. How many in the cockpit?
Um, we're all in the cockpit.
Okay.
You talk about ups
Yeah, all
pilots.
every first of all, everybody on the plane, and then how many in the cockpit?
So usually they'll fly with a pilot, co-pilot, and then an instruct. One flies in the jump seat, and then a fly another pilot. So we had like 4 pilots, um, and then we had three downstairs, and then we had another one kind of at the bunk. Um, so yeah, so yeah, and then EDUB, electronic warfare officer seat. We had one in there, one in the gunner seat. Um, so yeah, it was about 8 folks on the jet.
And how do you rotate nap time?
So yeah, so you just tap out when you say, "Hey, I'm tired," or whatever. I remember sitting in the seat the whole time though, except for and I remember the only time I took a nap was when we made contact with the air fuel in the tanker.
Mhm.
So once we talked them into position, got on a tanker, I kind of like took a little nap because the tanker was navigating and flying us wherever we need to go. And then as soon as we got off the nozzle, I pop back up.
What
So adrenaline's flowing and all other stuff, and yeah, so nonstop.
what was your first air refueling like? How nervous was that?
I wasn't too nervous about the air refueling because we'd done it before in training missions, so that was the only part to me was kind of nerve wracking was we there was one refueling. I think it was like the third or fourth one where they kept trekking us towards Vietnam. And I kept telling the pilots, like, hey, we're getting close to Vietnam airspace. And it's like, hey, and the pilot kept telling me, hey, we're following the tanker. And I was like, I kept telling him, I was like, hey, we're 20 miles or 50 miles or 30 miles or whatever. And then, and then all of a sudden, as we're about to encroach, and actually, I think the Vietnamese controller said something to us like, hey, aircraft, say you're heading or something like that. And all of a sudden they made a turn and started adjusting back to the south. So that was the only nerve wracking part I thought.
I've got you with couple things, and I don't know particular what order, but I've got you as Deputy Chief, Ops Division for the Air Force Global Strike Command. Was that your final, duty?
That
Or
was my final duty. And actually I had you said your father was a colonel.
father-in-law? Yeah.
Father-in-law, sorry. Father-in-law was a colonel weather wing commander.
Yep.
They don't do weather wing commanders anymore. The career kind of shrank down a little bit, but all the weather folks in Air Force Global Strike Command was reporting to me in that office.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I had some weather folks working for me.
Okay. Yeah, he retired in '82.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that was my final job. It was one of my favorite jobs too. I'm a big operations guy. I love operations. I thought I was going to do something along operations when I retired because I like action. I like stuff happening and like making decisions and things like that. So I thought I was going to do something in DoD and along operations, but yeah, it was a great job. Uh, uh, I had the weather folks, I had the air traffic control folks, the tower folks. I had which are airfield operations. I've had uh, some of the missileer stuff. Talked about missileer stuff
Yep.
earlier. Some of those folks work for me. The convoys stuff with convoys. I don't want to say too much, but yeah,
Yep.
movements and things like that. Yeah, they work for me also. So it was a great job briefing 1 stars, 2 stars, 4 stars. It was a great job.
Now, when you and Sissy and the kids plan on going on vacation, does that fall under your area of expertise and you got the planning and the rollout and the timing and everything?
No. So the transportation only piece that falls on me is the transportation. So I'm responsible for getting us from point A to point B.
Okay.
This is the planner. Like I I I I tell people this. I make so many decisions outside the home. I try to make as few of them as I can when I'm inside the home because I I I let her take the charge on a lot of that stuff that happens inside the home. Decorations, like you come in our house,
Yeah.
a lot of us say, "Oh, your house is so great, decorated so nicely and stuff like that." And I just point to her because I was like, I didn't have anything to do. I just wrote the check. She does all that. So,
Yeah, my
but
takeaway is
she'll
that's good husbanding right there, man. That's well
yeah,
done.
because I think happy wife, happy life. I mean, we've been married for 22 years,
Yep.
so I let her because if I buy something and I bring it home and she's like, "Where you?" And this happened. I speak from experience. She said, "Where do you think you're putting that at?" So it could be like, and I was like, "Okay, so I bought this for nothing." So now I've learned just to let her buy
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she makes all the vacation plans, times, where we're going, and things like that. So she's the planner.
Did you enjoy teaching ROTC at Valdosta State?
I did, in fact, one of my I think it was my favorite job non-flying. Um, I had the largest Air Force ROTC detachment in Georgia. I just had a blast mentoring kids and telling them about the Air Force. And I mean, they still reach out to me today, and some of them say like, "You're the best commander," and I write recommendation letters for them to get their go to graduate school. So um, I do that because my commander Air Force ROTC at Carolina was the exact same way. In fact, he and I both retired and moved to Chapel Hill at the same time. He's in 2019, so he lived down the street from me. So I love that aspect. Love teaching. Wouldn't mind doing it teaching part time right now. Um, so I'm looking possibly when I get more time do like a part time college, like an adjunct professor or something like that type role.
When I was doing research for, the show today, I just kinda Google I get on the internet and I just type in names and see what comes up. And on your Facebook page for your company, you have it's you and 5 other people. Is that your staff?
That was my staff when we first opened. A lot of those folks were were going to NC State. They've since now graduated and moved on. Yeah, so that was my staff when I first opened.
And how many
What
on
do you
your
think?
team now?
And that from that photo,
No, in now sitting here today, how many people are working for you?
we have two full time folks, and then we have one that's part time, still kind of like does marketing
Okay,
um, from time to time.
okay. And from the day you opened your shop till today with all the people that have come through there, what leadership skills did you see in the Air Force from, mentors and higher up the chain that you apply to those folks in your shop?
Hmm, that's a great question. Um, ooh, well, I think one of my NCOs, one of my master sergeants, she used to work for me. She told me this, and it's kind of I had never dawned on me before, but she said you have a great emotional intelligence um, about folks. So I think part of it is understanding and empathizing with folks of where they are and how to because even now in the midst of all the trials and tribulations a lot of companies are having folks come to work, stay to work, show up to work, etc. I think having conversations on with folks and making them feel like they're a part of the team is a great thing, great skill set to have because um, there's a my newest hire. He came over here, and he could have made more money. He told me, he's like, he could have made more money at this other place that was recruiting him. But he liked the feel when he came over here because I I delegated things to them, and I told them like, hey, this is not my office. This is like I'm treating you guys as like ambassadors of my office. You're like representations of me. So when you go out in the community, you have these conversations with folks. I'm empowering you to have those conversations with folks. I'm not telling you don't do it, don't do this, don't like the other company was telling me, hey, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. I tell them, hey, this is what you can do. This is what I encourage you to do. So I think it's just again understanding folks and just having making them feel like part of the team. I do things to make them feel like part of the family. Um, we do special events, fun events. We've been to the gun range, we've been to Top Golf, we've done stuff like that. Like because I want them to feel like again they're part of my State Farm family.
And I think as we get older and we look back on the jobs we have, at least for me, I'm drawn to the ones where there was that atmosphere and those relationships. My job in 1999, took the job as promotions manager at Daytona International Speedway and was only in that role for, I think, 3 years at the most. But the relationship on that team is what still stands out to me out of all the jobs I've ever had that I've either owned or worked for someone else. It's that atmosphere that I still go back to. And when I see, some of the folks I worked with commenting on something on Facebook, they'll pop up a picture every now and then about, who won the race that year, anything like that. And I just have nothing but fond memories. So I get where you're coming from because that is important. I mean, yeah, money's money and we can make that, but man, you gotta like getting up every day and going to your place of work, don't you?
Oh yeah, totally agree with you.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Your connection with Embry-Riddle, you have a degree from which campus?
The worldwide campus. That's my first master's degree.
Yep.
For some strange reason, I noticed that I get a degree every 10 years. I don't know if I'm a glutton for punishment or what is sick joke I'm playing on myself, but so yeah, I got my bachelor's in English at Carolina, and then I went and got master's aeronautical science at Embry-Riddle with a concentration in management in 2007, and in 2017 I got my MBA. So I'm due for another one in about 5 years. So you got
That's
any
sounds
recommendations?
like a doctorate, right?
Yeah,
Gotta be, right? Now, were you at the Embry-Riddle campus in Daytona or Flagstaff?
it's it's the worldwide campus. So pretty much uh, on we did some classes on campus. I mean on base. Some of the instructors would teach some of the classes at night,
Okay.
but um, majority of it was online.
Okay. All right.
But
So
we actually graduated. We go down to the Daytona campus,
yep.
which
And
is an awesome campus.
we were down there. We lived in Daytona from 99 to 2009 and loved that, and my boys played AAU basketball through Embry-Riddle and just, again, talk about atmosphere.
Yeah.
That was some cool stuff. How are you as a Boy Scout troop leader?
Well, I started in 2008. My son, who was a first grader, my oldest, first grader at the time, he went to school. We were stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I was working with Tomahawk cruise missiles as an operations planner. Um, we lived in Williamsburg, though, Colonial Williamsburg area. And my son comes home and he gets off the bus. He's waving this pamphlet. So he come and he's got a smile on his face. He comes over there and he says, "Hey, I want to join." And so it was Cub Scouts. So I said, "Okay, we can go out there and join Cub Scouts." So we go out there, and it was about like 20 other Tiger Cubs up there. And so the guy, one of the leaders, he was like, "Hey," he was the pack leader. He's like, "Hey, we need a Tiger Cub den leader. Anybody want to volunteer? Any of you fathers want to volunteer?" Everybody's looking at each other, and then my son goes, "My dad will volunteer." And so from that point on, I was Tiger Cub, and then I was what did I forget what's after Tiger? Tiger, Wolf, Bear, we below one, we
Twigler,
below
yep.
two. and then we joined the Boy Scouts as Boy Scout troop leader. I was everything as he went and climbed the ranks. So I figured out, hey, he's going to the meetings. I guess I could do my part too. So
Yep.
even now, I'm still connected to the local Boy Scout troop to help donate to them whenever they um, have these big events. So,
Yep.
uh,
Good for you doing that. It's, he'll remember that.
oh yeah,
Is
he's
is he Melvin the 4th?
no. My wife shot that down. So he's Anderson Lane. So all our kids have um, some connection to Chapel Hill in their name. So
Keep talking.
uh,
Give me the 3, give me the names and what they're connected to.
so Anderson Lane, which is probably not going to guess it, but his middle name's Lane. His mother-in-law's nickname's Lane.
Okay.
So his mother-in-law lives in Chapel Hill. Uh, my daughter is Caroline Grace, so Caroline,
Mhm.
and then Grace after Grace Kelly. Um,
Nice.
and my youngest is Landon Hill, so Chapel Hill Hill.
Ah, okay.
So that's our connection. So
How short of a conversation was it between you and Sissy about Melvin the 4th?
uh, I don't even think I got the words out right. I know. So I think one of the biggest piece of advice they told me when I got married, I share this with everybody I know who's about to get married. I said, there's going to be some battles you're going to win, some battles you're going to lose, and some battles you shouldn't even fight.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I was like, I didn't even fight that one.
Yep.
So
I hear you. Now, when your grandfather was still living, were all 3 of you called Melvin?
no, um, my grandfather was, I mean, it's called him granddad. Um,
But what did
my
his friends
dad
call him? What name did he go by? Was he everybody know him as Melvin?
knew him as Melvin,
So when all
and
3 of
then
you were in the house and somebody said Melvin, did all 3 of you turn around?
well, my dad was Melvin Jr.
Okay.
or Junior. They call him Melvin Jr. And then me, my nickname is Donnie. Uh, for my middle name's Darnell, so they call me Donnie.
Okay.
So a lot of my family members still call me Donnie. Um, if my dad and I are in the same house, you'll hear Donnie.
Okay.
People are like, who was that? So
Yeah. And when he and his dad were in the same house, he was always Melvin Jr., right?
Melvin Jr. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There you go. Real quick before we're done here, give me a tip on if somebody's looking to get into the insurance industry, what should they have going for them or what should they be thinking about making sure something they're good at?
I, th- I'm a bad person to ask about this because
Don't lead with that, Melvin.
because I think it's almost like it's almost like picking who's going to be the best. Like, uh, I don't know. I watch NBA. Who's going to be the best NBA player from year to year? Uh, like Steph Curry. Would you have thought Steph Curry would be one of the top 10
No.
greatest players? No, no,
Nope.
because he's like, oh, he's too small. He's too skinny.
Yep.
But, um, but I think you have to accentuate what you're good at. And I think for one thing, you have to have the blessings of so if you don't have the blessings of your spouse or your kids, and you try to go on this entrepreneurial journey, it's going to be challenging. So I think that's number one thing. Another two thing is to have a little self reflection of what are you good at and what can you bring to the table. So for me, I think I bring and people tell me like, because I don't think I'm a salesperson, and I approach things that way. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to make sure you're covered. So for me, I'm very transparent with folks. I'm not a pushy person at all. I just say, hey, let me take a look at your policies and see where there's any gaps, holes, or seams in which something could happen. Because I hear about a lot of horror stories, but I hear a lot of success stories too. But I think that's the biggest advice I would have is again, have the blessing of your family for one. For two, figure out what you're good at, and then and bring that out.
Well, we've been putting Melvin's phone number up here on the screen, and the website to get in touch with him also, it's Raleigh SF is in statefarm.com. So www.raleightsf.com. You can get in touch with him either way. Even if you have a question, like he's mentioned a couple times, even if you have a question, that's what a good insurance agent does, is just talk to you. Like you said, let me just look at what you got and I'll see if I can help. So if you have any question about whether you're underinsured, overinsured, need to be insured, please give Melvin a call. I know he'll be able to help you. You can tell by the way he's talked that he just likes helping people and giving back. And Melvin, it's been a blast having you on the show, learned about your B-52 career and how you got into insurance.
Hey, thanks for inviting me today, Mike. I enjoyed having, as always, enjoyed having a conversation with you. I tell you too, if I was going to have someone narrate my life, it's going to be you. So got that radio voice. And so, um,
Right?
but
I,
have fun with those grandkids.
yep.
And ever need anything, feel free to give me a call.
I will appreciate the compliment, and we will see everybody next time on Triangle BNI.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.